Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Transcending Together with Julianne, Lee, and Rachel.
Yeah, no, I just think that last point about kind of what you were saying, Carly, about people needing to look internally at themselves is super interesting. And it's something that I have a lot of conversations about with my friends. I was actually having this conversation with a friend the other evening and just saying, I think where a lot of transphobia is coming from is fear, but that's something that you need to work through. Like, if you recognize that gender is a spectrum and is not like this binary thing, then that opens up a world of possibilities for yourself and how you could express your gender. And I think that some people, rather than then doing that internal work that's needed to process what that means for them and how that might alter their gender expression or the way that they live, rather than doing that process, just it's too frightening, it's too much, and they don't want to do that work. So that comes out, I think, in this kind of transphobia that we're seeing right now. And as somebody who's currently going through that process of doing that work about my gender expression, I'm more and more believing that I'm non-binary and, how that's going to sort of impact my life. It's not an easy process. It hasn't been sunshine and rainbows, and it's been painful and difficult sometimes to actually think, oh, if I am non-binary and I want to express my gender in a way that's more who I am, like, that's going to have implications for my life. That's going to have implications for my relationships, particularly with my family. And yeah, I think that kind of shutdown can sometimes happen where people go, no, that's too difficult. So instead, these people that challenge me I'm going to, instead of recognizing that challenge and doing that work, I'm going to shut them out, and that's going to come across as hatred. And I do think that is where a lot of that transphobia comes from. So yeah, it's kind of my 2 cents on that issue. So yeah.
No, I was just saying I agree with Rachel. It's a process, and we're all in one way or another going through that process, and it's not an easy process to deal with. And it's something I tell people often is that the one thing I think people need to realize, it's okay not to, in this case, it's okay to feel apprehension about this. It is okay to feel a certain kind of way about these things. It's okay to be afraid. Only a fool wouldn't be, because it does have an effect on your life. It will affect the people around you. It will, transition. That's one thing that gets me about the people that feel that this is so easy. Like, oh, you wake up one morning and all these people talk about self-identification, and they make it sound like it's just a snap and it's so easy. This is, in my own experience, this was the hardest, most one of the hardest, most difficult things I had to do in my life, is have this reckoning. This was not easy. This was not on a whim. And that's the other thing. People will say, "Oh, you're rushing, like, these young people, you're rushing them through it." I don't know anywhere in the world that's fast tracking kids through a transition. This is a glacial, difficult process for anyone. Anyone who comes up to you and says, "Oh, rapid onset gender dysphoria," they're not a serious person. Stop talking to them. They have no idea what's happening here. They have no idea the decisions they're being made. A perfect example is Emily Bridges. Do you really think Emily Bridges made this move for herself and her well-being on a whim? Think about what that young woman left on the table to pursue her truth. If Emily Bridges had never transitioned, we would be talking about her in the Tour de France this year. Philippa York would be talking about how she's going to turn the Giro out in a few weeks' time. We would be talking about medal hopes for Paris right now.
Yeah, it is. And, this idea that, um, which just makes me sick, is this idea that men are transitioning to women just so they can play sport and win, which is so, I mean, it's misogynistic, it's disingenuous to the fantastic cisgendered women who play sport, who against all odds as well. I think this is where this is, that there ought to be this collaboration between cis and transgender women, because we we share we are a minority, we are an underprivileged segment of the sporting society, and we should be fighting together to make the slice of the pie bigger and the pie bigger, rather than arguing about the few crumbs that fall from the table.
Yeah, I think
Exactly. Another example I want to throw out there because it's important to talk about this person. There's a young skateboarder in the United States named Sam Baker. Sam Baker gave up being an Olympic hopeful to transition. If Sam Baker would have just kept his mouth shut and just said, "You know what? Fake like you're a woman," all the endorsements, an Olympic bid, and they were a medal contender. Instead, Sam was like, "No, that's not who I am. I am a man, and I am a man. I need to move forward in that truth." Left an Olympic bid on the table for that. Now, I want to ask any transphobe: you think this is easy? You think it's easy to leave? Do you think it's easy to have family turn your back on you? That's happened to many of us. That's happened to me. Do you think it's easy to realize that you have to rethink your entire life and reconceptualize your entire life, and for many of us, start over from dead zero?
Yeah, exactly.
And yes, Julie, I'm with you. We need we need to be talking about this, as especially as people in sport. We need to be having these conversations because we need to be working we need to be working within ourselves for the benefit of us all. Things like the Castor Semenya rule. I've been speaking out on that for a decade because it's archaic, it is racist, it is archaic, it is completely tilted toward the global north and the western world. It is ridiculous. If if Laura Muir had been treated the way Castor Semenya had been treated, do you really think British athletics would allow that?
No, well, now they would. They probably would now.
Uh,
Seb Coe, I mean, he's an absolute full-on
Mm,
transmisogynist.
no, Seb Coe would step in the middle of it and say, "You're not messing with our girl, even if she is Scottish." There's
Huh.
no way Laura that happens to Laura Muir. There's no way that happens to Femke Bol. There's no way. I'll even say it. I don't even think a black British or American athlete would be treated the way Castor Semenya was treated. Castor Semenya was treated the way she was because she is a black athlete from a poor country, or what is perceived to be a poor country in the global south. The same way with Duty Chand. Oh, she's South Asian. She's from India. We can ride down on her and she won't fight back. The thing is though, Duty Pastor Semenya did fight back.
Mm,
And every woman in sport should have been fighting back right along with her and said, "No, this is not right."
yeah.
But instead, many people acted like Lindsay Sharp. And yes, I'll mention Lindsay Sharp. By the way, Lindsay, can you get out of the first round yet? Oh no! Oh no! I'm catty like that. I'll cattiness on that one.
Got the ears on.
Seeing her bomb out the first round of World Athletics, I was just like the South African. And but that that we need solidarity. I mean, athletes that was affected by what did last year at the World Championships was the same who did not have nice way about. And as much as I disagreed with her transfer, stand up for her right to get the funding she earned for a competition she earned the right. That's solidarity. Solidarity means I will ride for your right if you won't necessarily ride for mine because it's about something bigger. It's not about you. Person behind you. It's about the girls that are coming behind you to make sure they get their piece of the pie. No, so I'm
Yeah,
with you on that,
absolutely.
Julie.
Rachel, did you want to? I think you wanted to say
yeah,
something.
no, I mean, I just, as somebody that is AFAB, I really believe that that is our responsibility, is to fight this fight, because you know it. I think it's this transphobia that is coming into sport. It's also, it's affecting women far more than it is men, I would say, and women's sport far more than it is male sport. And I just think that we need to recognize it for what it is, which is them coming for our rights to participate in sports. And I always like to remind like cis women of this. I always say, you should care anyway, like you should care, because you just shouldn't be a TERF or a transphobe. But I was like, this does not end with what they're doing currently. This will continue to be pervasive, like in women's sport. They will keep on finding ways to put women's sport down. They will keep on creating divisive policies that target our sport and our right to engage in sport more than it does men's, because that we've seen that history. Like, that history is there for us to read. So if we are not coming together to fight this, and as Julie said, fight for equity, which looks, equity means them actually probably investing more into women's sport for a period of time, because we've had years of them not. Like, if we're not fighting together for that big bit of the pie, then what are we doing? Like, it's just not good enough. And I'm constantly thinking, I don't engage in sport in a competitive way. I play rugby. I've now started American football, which I don't think Julie knows, but I'm loving it. And I want to leave behind a world that makes it much easier for anybody, particularly women, to engage in sport, because it's really important and it's transformed my life being able to play sport. So, yeah.
With that in mind, I have a question. And since you both live in the UK, you're at the center of it, you maybe give me an answer. Picking on Park Run. Why? Why are they picking on Park Run?
I know. There's no medals. There's no money. There's no. It's like you run. I mean, I don't run a lot. I mostly run from my problems. Um, but I mean, to me, parkrun, when I used to do quite a lot of running, I always thought parkrun was about you and your personal best and improving your personal fitness. I mean, if some people are in their minds thinking they're competing with everyone else, well, good luck. You do you. But parkrun is very specifically something. It's a way to organize people so you can run together as a group, and it's about you. It's not about where you rank with everybody else. There's no money, there's no glory, there's no nothing. What an absolute load of complete and utter bullshit. And I can say that now that we're
Yeah,
not on trans
no, but
radio.
no, but here's the thing. I look at that and I wonder, are these people serious people? This is I go to something very similar every Saturday at my favorite running shoe store in the morning. They have like a Saturday morning like running group. You get together, you stretch out, and then you go out and we have a bunch of different groups doing a lot of different distances. You go out, you run, you get a little bit of exercise, and you have a good time. What is with these people with this whole park run thing? Exactly. There's no money involved. There's nothing involved. And I'm just wondering where would this coming from? The same way with why, and also want to ask you both, why do, because I wanted to touch on her, and I think it'd be a good time to do it. Why do people, what is with people in Emily Bridges? Why are they jumping on this kid so much? What, in your view, as people who live in the culture, who live in the United Kingdom, who've seen this up front and up close, and who get up in the morning and watch Good Morning Britain and have to be subjected to GB News and the Daily Fail or the Daily Heil, depending on how deep you want to go with it. Um, what is in? Give me a Britain's take on why people really believe that Emily Bridges was this big Welsh dragon that was going to burn women's cycling.
I'll go first, but I'm sure Rachel's got some views on this. I think that one of the things which our media, and you, referred to them, the Daily Fail, and um, the Telegraph and all of those things. I mean, it was quite
Oh, the
interesting.
toy graph.
Yeah, the Tory graph. It's quite interesting that when I first started my battle, I only got coverage. I got like BBC, the Telegraph, and the Times were the only ones that actually reached out to me for comment and stuff, which I thought was interesting. And I came to understand it was more about the specific journalists. And I think at a certain point, stories about me started getting spiked by the editors, by the senior editors. Um, so so that is part of it. But the problem is, like, everyone, we've got this newspaper in down in sort of the London commuter belt, which is called the Metro. And it just makes me so sad when I get on the train on the odd occasion that I do go into London and everybody's buried in their Metro. And the Metro is basically the Daily Mail from a daily commuter point of view. And people here are so focused on division and hatred. And right now it's trans people. Before us, it was immigrants, and now we kind of equally hated. And I think a big part of it is that the gender critical movement in this country, ably assisted by the likes of J.K. Rowling and Maya Forstater, and assisted along by Kimi Badenoch and Priti Patel and Suella Braverman, and just really awful people. People, they don't want to learn. They don't want to understand. They want to sit there in their little bubble, and it's just and then I think the thing which I found most interesting is the first time the papers actually called out Rishi Sunak for what he said in Parliament when Brianna Jai's mom was in Parliament. If people were starting to say, "Oh, we finally broken through. We're finally getting people to be sensitive to trans people," and that wasn't actually, when you read the coverage, it was the Brits can get on board with a grieving mother. She was a grieving mother who had lost a child. And it was all about Esther. And I'm not saying it's not about Esther. Of course, she is the grieving mother. But none of it spoke to the transphobic element. In fact, they even tried to wash over it and make out like her being trans wasn't a factor, despite the fact that, like, in the person's diary, it was, he writes, "I want to see if it screams like a boy or a girl." But no, it wasn't because they were trans. It wasn't,
Mm,
that wasn't it. So yeah,
that
they're an
was from
angry,
the
horrible,
that was
narrow-minded bunch of welly wearing. I don't know, Rachel. You better come in here, otherwise I'm
well,
gonna.
no, but that's something Rachel, I want to get your view on this as well. It's like, because I saw that with the Prime Minister's questions. I mean, that drew news here in the States. That drew quite a following here as well. This, Rachel, what's your view of it? Because one thing I especially want to talk about is the press coverage after that, and I made a point to watch all the press coverage, whether it was BBC's coverage, ITV's coverage, GB News, God forbid, all the news coverage that came out after that, and all the panels that night that were all over the different news programs in the UK. The common denominator was not a single one had a trans person on it.
Did you know we've got an absolutely wonderful merch store? You can buy merch from the show. You can buy this mug, which supports my rugby team, the Sussex Dragons. This is one of my favorites. This is best part of waking up, turf tears in my cup. We also have t-shirts, which support my rugby team, and t-shirts which express our dissatisfaction with England rugby for the way they've treated trans people. And for you bikers out there, we've got our Sisters on Steel Motorcycle Club. Scan this QR code or follow the links on tigergirl.substack.com. Now back to the show.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think my perspective on it was, you know, I think obviously it was absolutely right that there was the press and the coverage of it, and what Rishi did was truly awful, to say that in front of a grieving mother. But I kind of said to my friends, this, I do worry that if he hadn't said that in front of her mother, would anybody have actually said anything? Like, because trans people have become the butt of the joke, and that's been so normalized. And this isn't the first time that we've heard him say something transphobic. He's got a track record of saying transphobic things. And my kind of thing was, how far have we got with transphobia being accepted, that the only time that it kind of got the press and the coverage that, warranted, like even you reading about it, was when it was said in front of somebody's, Rihanna's mother, which obviously it was right that it did, because it was awful. But, why was it only then, actually, when we've allowed this kind of pervasive transphobia to go unchallenged, to get to this point where he is able to openly say these things? We've allowed so many things to slide and go unchallenged before, to get us to this point in culture that we're at. And I think, to be honest with you, the media in the UK has got a lot to answer for. And we know, like, it doesn't take long to realise how many of the papers Murdoch owns. And we know, like, that, he's an awful human being. So, I think we have a media in this country that I think is very monopolised and controlled by the right-wing kind of government. And they are just allowing these things to be said. And, like, the fact that they're publishing so many stories about the trans community that are negative, like, that is feeding this kind of, I would say, this kind of culture war that seems to be happening, in the moment. And I think that, as Julie quite rightly pointed out, the Tory party have a habit, I think, of when things go wrong and when they've fucked up, which they have. The state of our country at the moment is awful. They just blame it on a community instead, so that they can push the blame away from themselves. And I think, we've seen that with immigrants, and we're now seeing that with the trans community. So, yeah.
So that's why they're blaming us for Brexit. Yeah, Brexit. It was Felix Fern's fault. Yeah, Monroe Bergdorf. That's why you have Brexit now.
No, they don't apologise for Brexit, because they maintain it's all going swimmingly.
Yeah, we're getting pints of wine.
That Katie Montgomery, that led to Brexit. Okay.
Yeah, it's I think the other part of it, which, if you look at what's going on over your side, so I'm going to throw it back over the pond here with the nonsense that's been going on in Georgia with Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, and how,
good Lord,
those attorneys stood there with a straight face and are calling them out for an inappropriate relationship, when just look at what their effing client did. An adjudicated rapist, and improper relationships with women, numerous, Eugene Kelly. I follow in Substack.
It's called
Carol.
But you know what this is all. You know what this is all about. This is about, simply put, a group. This is, at one level, you have. I'll explain the United States real quick. You see, in the United States, especially among the Bible thumping crowd, because and that Bible thumping crowd is funding a lot of the transphobia you're seeing in Britain. And the Sunday Times has done stories on this. Guardian's done stories on this. This is all over. This has been over the British press as well. on how groups like Turning Point and Focus on the Family and the Heritage Foundation are funding British transphobia. I mean, the Women's Liberation Front, they're funded by the Heritage Foundation. The Women's Declaration International, they're funded by some of the biggest evangelical Christian groups in the United States. Interesting. Feminist being funded by people who believe The Handmaid's Tale is a textbook. What you're seeing here is you're seeing this cabal of Bible thumpers, these evangelical Christians who so want power and realize that by themselves, straight up, they're not getting it. They found a vessel. They found Donald John Trump. And Donald John Trump is about as unchristian and this man probably has never sat in a pew in his life, but he is the choice of Jesus. Yeah, because you have to understand with evangelical Christians, they have a belief that God is okay with a little white lie as long as the lie is little and the person telling it is white. That's what you're seeing in the United States. That's what you saw in Georgia. Never mind that there is proof and evidence, open, naked evidence, that Donald Trump wanted to fix an election where he basically tried to strong arm a Secretary of State saying, I just need 11,780 votes. He is on tape saying this. It should be in a sane country. This does in a sane country, Donald John Trump would be locked under a jail in a sane country. But you understand, the United States is an armed madhouse. The United States is not a sane country. The same way that the United Kingdom right now, under the Tories, is not a sane country. In many ways, I mean, this is a macabre, bizarro Thatcher world that you're seeing in the UK, and in the United States, what you're seeing here is something you've never seen in American history before. You have never seen you have never seen a man openly calling for fascism at the levers of power, and that's really what you're seeing in the United States. You're seeing Gore Vidal's worst nightmare come to life the day that the United States puts in a damn fool as president. Well, you saw it in 2016 to 2020. And if people put transphobia above sanity, you're going to see it again. Because I find it interesting that 1.6 million people are so spooking 329 million others that they would want to institute America's version of Oswald Mosley in as president again. And that's what you're seeing in the United States. And that is part of it, the moral panic over Fannie Willis and Fannie Willis dating an attorney who is not even on this case, on a different case. That is what you're seeing, this moral panic. And that is a lot also where the transphobia is coming from. It is for these people, they see my mere existence as this moral panic. And again, that goes back to some people's internalized transphobia. Because just to give you a personal story, I was once speaking at a panel a couple of years ago. And it was a panel, on trans people. It's one of those things where if you don't know a trans person, here's an opportunity to meet trans people and actually talk to them. And afterwards, I'm holding court with some of the people there and talking to them. And there was this one man who walks by in line. And if you will, he's what you would consider the aging dude, bro. He's in jeans and a sweatshirt. He's in jeans and a sweatshirt with his favorite ball team or his college on it or whatever. I mean, the British equivalent would be, some middle-aged guy, salt and pepper, beard and hair, and who's probably going to go have a pint afterwards, and whatever football side he supports is on his shirt. And this man comes up to me, and this man says, maybe if your daddy had thrown a football around with you, this wouldn't have happened. Yes. Maybe if you had a father around to throw a football. Now, here I am sitting here and I'm smiling and I'm looking, I'm looking rather nice that day. Got a nice little A-line skirt and a blouse and a blazer, a pair of heels on. I turn towards this guy, cross my legs just so, adjust the skirt a little bit, look up at him, and I serve him a mix of sweet feminine syrup mixed with some snake venom. And I look up at him and say, "Sir, I was my daddy's starting quarterback for 2 years and won a championship. Still happened." And I could turn his face turn red immediately. That is a piece of the moral panic, especially I find for people, and I think this is why you have a lot of the trans misogyny that you're happening. Because I mean, think about it. I've had I've had people close to me say things like people, family say, why would you want to become a woman in this society? And people say that. And that's a piece of that moral panic. The idea that in the case of trans women, people who say no, I'm not a man, and decide no, I am going to make you don't. No one being trans is not a choice. What you do about it is. What you do with the information is the choice, not who you are. There's more trans people running around living closeted than you realize.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
I've
more
always
people leading.
sorry. Yeah, I
No, what
mean,
was that?
yeah, I mean, I've always my view on it has always been like I think a big part of the trans misogyny comes from they people can understand why a woman would want to be a man. That's why a lot of trans men, and I'm not saying they get a pass. I'm not saying it's any easier for them. In other ways, it's a lot harder. But um, I think society as a whole can understand why they can sort of it makes sense to them why a woman would want to be a man. But why on earth would a man want to be a woman? You, you know, that just to them is like that they just don't get it, and it's that internalized misogyny and that unconscious bias towards women that they see men who become women as taking a step down in society.
And that's the same thing in sport. And it goes back to what we were talking about with the kid in Arizona. I mean, this is a person who won 3 state championships in a row, was a nationally ranked wrestler at a young age, will probably be an Olympic hope, will at least have an outside shot at making the Olympic team this year as a high school kid. Will definitely make it in 4 years' time if she stays with it. In the meantime, she'll go on to college wrestling and rock the house. But people look at, but now people notice because she won a boys tournament. And all of a sudden now she's legitimately, I can root for her as a legitimate athlete. It's the same thing what we're seeing right now. I mean, in the big piece of the sporting news here in the United States is towards a young woman at the University of Iowa, Caitlin Clark, who in basketball has scored more points than just about any college player in history of men's or women's, and recently surpassed a legend who owns the men's collegiate mark. And now people are looking at her like she's the second coming when we've had players who I feel are even better than she was come in women's basketball in the past of the sport. But because of here and now, and people can appreciate it because, oh, but she broke this legendary man's record. Because of we I think that's one of the biggest problems we have in women's sport is that women's sport is still judged through a male gaze and not on its own merit. And I think that's
Yeah,
a lot of what you're seeing is that all of a sudden we're still stuck in a paradigm that's 50, 60 years out of date. The idea that, for example, the ladies Wimbledon champion is less than the men's, even though the ladies are playing more compelling tennis.
yeah, it's the same
I
with
mean, really,
rugby.
think
It's
about it.
better rugby.
Yes, I mean rugby, right? I mean, right now, who I mean, who's excelling in football at the international stage? The Lionesses are excelling as well as the Three Lions are. In fact, in some ways, let me put it this way: the England women's national football team will win a World Cup before the next time the men do. I'll call it.
Oh
And I
yeah.
love Gareth Southgate. I love Gareth Southgate, and I think he's done an exemplary job getting England back in position to where they're really a competitive international side again, and they're a threat to win Euro and a threat to win the World Cup. I'll tell you right now, the Lionesses, they're going to win a World Cup.
Hmm.
You,
Yeah, they were
they're going
very
to win.
unlucky not to win the
I'll,
last one.
and I'll say it right now. They'll win the next. They'll come. They'll come to North America. Win the next one.
Yeah.
I will call that the final in 2026 will be England and the United. The final, or rather, the next Women's World Cup, which also may be in the United States. The next Women's World Cup, they're going to win the thing. And I hope that people really get behind it the way that they got behind things at Euro 2020. Well, the way fans got behind it. The FA still has to get on board.
Hmm.
But the thing is, that's where a lot of the transphobia and misogyny work hand in hand. It's like beans and toast. They work hand in hand. And I think people need to start realizing that and understanding that if you want to know why you have the misogyny in sports, look at the transphobia in sports. It's the same system. And when people stop looking at sport through a male gaze and just start looking at sport for what it is, when we start celebrating women in sports on their own merit and quit trying to bring the whole men's angle into it, it'll be better for sport and also it'll be better for society.
Amen to that. And I'm running out of time as well. Rachel, how are you doing for time? I know you had something you needed to do. Do you want to say anything before we
No,
close?
like I've just thank you for having me, and also my cat is making an appearance as per usual. But yeah, no, thanks. It's been lovely to chat, and yeah, but yeah, I need to head off. So yeah,
I think we'll wrap it there. Thanks, Carly. I think we definitely need you on more often, and we're gonna.
Well,
There's just so much to talk
anytime,
about and so many things.
anytime,
So, all right, brilliant.
anytime, because I like talking about this. I'll talk about trans rights anytime, but I think one thing we need to continue to do is a lot of transatlantic exchange, especially because a lot of the things, again, so much of what we're seeing in the United States were things that were first field tested in the UK. And a lot of the things that are coming out of the UK, a lot of the transphobia that's coming out, a lot of the British transphobia is finding its way into the discourse here in the United States. And for example, the case of Leah Thomas,
Mm,
you had the nastiest of British transphobes coming here. And that's another thing. Suella Braverman,
oh,
Posey Parker is better at home. Her home is the best place to be a transphobe. Stay there.
yeah.
Don't let her come to my country. Don't let her come to my country again. Take her passport, please. Don't. You're not welcome here in America. You're not. No. Keep Posey Parker at home. Thank
Okay.
you.
Public service. All right. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on again. And as I said, I'll definitely we should do this more regularly, I think. So we'll catch
I'm
up
for it.
definitely before
Yeah,
the
let's catch up.
elections. Let's see what happens there. And we're going to have ours before yours. So I'm sure we'll have
Well,
lots to
let me
talk
put it
about.
this way. If you do a thing when they call a general election, I'm in because I haven't missed watching a British general election since 1992.
Yeah, they can be fun.
They can be a lot of 92. That was real fun because I was on a newspaper internship in Colorado, and there were a couple of exchange students from the UK. We actually had bet. I actually placed my first bet because this was early days of the internet. I actually had a bet I actually won some money on that election.
Oh, well done.
I actually I bet on John. I said like I bet on John. I placed a bet down on John Major. 150 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't great, but we could do with more statesmen like that again, not this
Well,
torrid mob. All right,
well,
babe.
that's what you have in this country. But hey, you got to go. I mean, it's the same thing here. There's no statesman in the U.S. anymore either.
Yeah. All right, we'll chat soon, hey? Thanks so much again.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. You have a good day now.
Take care. Bye.